Welcome to A Moment of Significance, the podcast where we uncover the stories, the struggles, and the strategies of extraordinary leaders who understand that true success is not just about what you achieve, it's about the significance you create and the legacy you leave behind. I'm your host, Stijn Rousseau, and today we have an absolute crazy privilege of sitting down with a man whose story just spans continent, it spans industries, generations, from the Smoky Mountains of North Carolina to the schools and communities across South Africa. Larry Carpenter has spent more than 40 years sharing messages of faith, hope, and high performance. He's worked alongside some of the greatest leaders in the world, the greatest motivators, including none other than the legendary Zig Ziglar, and has always built businesses, mentored leaders, and inspired thousands of young people to choose faith over fear. I want to welcome Larry and give him a heartwarm welcome in South Africa, Mr. Larry Carpenter. Morning, Larry. It's such a privilege to have you on the podcast today. And just spend the next hour with you. And, as we are good friends, let's just have as much fun as possible on this live podcast today. Right. While we're speaking to the world and we're sharing a special message this morning. And I want to simply start off, Larry, by you've lived such an incredible life. I want to know who's Larry Carpenter. You've been an entrepreneur, skydiver, car racer, a speaker. How did those early experiences shape your outlook on life and prepare you for the mission you live today? Let's just jump right in.
Good morning, Stijn, and good morning, South African audience, actually all over America. I heard this broadcast is going to the United States.
All over the world.
It's crazy. It's a lot of fun. So I'm sure we'll hear from some of our buddies back in the States. But Stijn, that's a big question. Becoming successful in life when you were raised very poor. I was raised very humble as an auto diesel mechanic, twisted wrenches on Detroits and Cummins from the time I could literally walk in a garage until I was 21 years of age. So I understood hard work, but I also looked around and I noticed that there were some men and some women that seemed to start filling their mind with wisdom and different angles of attack on life. Instead of just working hard with our hands, we can only earn about $10 to $15 an hour in America with our hands. But if we work with our minds, it's unlimited amount of income. We can earn $200, $500, even $1,000 per hour if we learn to use our mind. So once I was introduced to that concept through a mutual friend that Stijn and I share, Zig Ziglar, Zig began to go to work on me, and I was looking for answers as a young man. So if I was going to jump right in and share one of the things that kept me poised and kept me in the right attitude about life, in America, we had an engine additive. I'm not sure if you ever had it over here. It was called STP, the Winner's Edge. It was an oil treatment, and when you would pour it in your tank with your oil, when you change the oil, and it would supposedly give you a longer engine life. So STP is an acronym I adapted for my life. S was self-denial, T, training, and P was for perseverance. So you took those three ingredients and it really opened up a whole world to me. And then I had to balance that out because I didn't want to talk too much about the things I was learning. So I had to develop another acronym, Stijn, which is WASTE, W-A-I-S-T, like your waist.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
WASTE for me stood for why am I still talking? I learned pretty quickly. I didn't learn a lot when I was talking, but when I was quiet and humble about being around other successful people, I could learn a lot more if I simply remained a little quieter and didn't talk too much. And then the last thing, I had an attitude about life, Stijn, that a lot of people would shun and not appreciate. But for me, the attitude is this: when you've done everything you can, you haven't. So I live with that. I never thought that I had done quite enough preparing an engine block to put heads on it. Instead of just sanding it and making it clean, I had to make it immaculately clean, like it was a dinner table we were eating off of. And my father and mother both supported doing things right the first time. So you take that attitude when you think you've done everything in life, you haven't. Obviously, there's a balance to that, but that keeps a guy in the game. We never give up. We always are constantly trying to self-improve. So that's my thoughts on that.
Oh, what a great attitude to have. When you think you're done, you aren't. And I just love that attitude, and fantastic. So what value would you say from your upbringing? If you just think back at little Larry Carpenter, and what is one of the values that still guide you today, that you just carry through your life up to this moment in time, and it really just keeps you focused and guided?
Yeah, well, Stan, that's a great question. And it's an easy one to answer because I was raised with hardworking mother and father. A lot of you, I understand, may have not had a mother and a father at home, but I was blessed with a mother that taught us love, how to love others, and a father that taught us how to work hard and enjoy our work. And if you didn't enjoy your work, find something you can enjoy, but work hard. There's no excuse for being a sloth or slacking off or being lazy. But probably the guiding principle over all of this are the priorities that my family embraced. And it's very simple. We embrace God first, then family, then business. So those were the priorities that we made our decisions for in life. When presented with opportunities, of course, you don't want to say no to a chance to go out and make some money, that you have to do what we have to do to keep the family provided for. And men, I believe that we should be the major breadwinner in our family. It's okay if the woman wants to supplement, provide extra vacations and all kind of extra perks and benefits. But I believe the man should provide the food, shelter, and clothing for his family. By accepting that responsibility, it always calls me to work harder, Stan. And I think I developed that attitude simply because God, family, and then business.
Absolute fantastic principle to follow, and I absolutely love that. Was there a moment when you realized success alone wasn't enough, and that you were meant to live a life of significance? This podcast is called a moment of significance, and it's really the combination of success, significance, and legacy. And I often wonder, for successful people like yourself, because you're a highly successful individual and man, making a huge impact all over the world, so that moment when you realize, and we get that moment in life, we realize that success alone is not enough, and that you were absolutely meant to live a life of significance. What is that moment for you?
Wow, that's a big question. I think as we start to accumulate success and get some momentum going in our life, it is natural to look larger than ourselves, to see how we can help our community, help our fellow man. For me, especially, my family needed a lot of help. The motivating factor for me to go to college was that no one else in my family and my siblings and cousins at that time had gone to the university. So I wanted to start university and see if more extra education would help me a lot. And I think the other key component to being able to think big and realize that I've got more to do with life than just barely make ends meet had to deal with self-esteem, how a person sees himself. And Stan, if I could wish one thing upon our listening audience today, it would be to empower them with how important and how vital they are to not just their family, but to their community and to other people they'll touch with their lives. You are one of God's favorites, each of you. You are one of God's favorites. And when you accept that he loves us and breathed life into us, and the very fact that we're born, Bible tells us that we were chosen and selected, and he knew us before we even breathed our first breath. And when we grasp that and accept it, it does make you feel better about your relationship with God and being on planet Earth and how you can help each other. I tell you, one of the things Stan and I enjoy the most about being with each other is we both have an attitude that you can have everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. Now, Stan and I, it's often a contest to see who's going to outdo each other, just thinking ahead and being courteous and expressing gratitude. But I think those types of things and attitudes, Staying, probably have propelled me to think larger than just myself.
Yeah, and when we start helping someone else achieve more than they thought possible, that's really where significance lie. And it's literally, the quote you just used, Larry, has been my absolute living standard for the last 30 years. 30 years ago, I learned that from the great Zig Ziglar. You can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get that they want, and literally implement it and live that. Now, here's the thing of Larry. Larry is, you've built and led several successful business ventures. And it's always interesting speaking to a man that has been truly, truly successful in business and is self-made, so to speak. So if you don't mind sharing, what were some of the biggest lessons you've learned from your wins? And I'm 100% certain, being that successful, there were some failures somewhere in that process, So what lessons have you learned on this journey of becoming that successful and building in businesses and leading these ventures that you've put up?
Yeah. Well, later in our podcast today, I'll share one of those secrets, Staying. But something that comes to my mind very quickly is entrepreneurs, and a lot of you on podcasts today. It's really important, and you already know this, that we seek out sources of inspiration. When we're out here on our own, by and large, if you're an entrepreneur or building your own company, it's a very lonely road to follow in life. We're not standing around with a lot of cheerleaders cheering us on. Most of us are not blessed with that type of support team around us. So, Staying, I always felt like it's important to seek out sources of inspiration. So if I've been able to stay in the game and keep honing my skills and polishing skills and attitudes and skill set, throughout my career, it's been because I traveled and I spend a few dollars to be in the presence of great people. This podcast today, the audience has an opportunity to reach out and work closer with you, Staying, on a short-term or long-term basis. And probably the best gift and best word of encouragement for the audience today is to plug in to Staying Rousseau. Learn everything about this guy. You talk about sources of inspiration. It's unlimited how this guy will learn your personality type, learn where your skills and your passions are, and help you set those goals to achieve greatness with your own life. And the few dollars you spend on having a coach or someone to take a personal interest in you, it will dim in comparison. You'll never miss the money, but you will look in the mirror and notice a significant difference in your life in the first 30 days, the next 60 days, and 90 days. It's amazing at the transformation that will take place. So maybe that is part of the answer to that, Staying.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. What an absolute kind comment to make, and I really appreciate that. And I often say to people, we underestimate or overestimate what we can get done in a month, and we truly underestimate what we can get done in 12 months. And business is a journey. Sometimes we do great things, and sometimes we learn great lessons. And I truly believe, either in life you always have two choices and two options, and in business you're either winning or you're learning. Is really one of the philosophies I've adapted, because we're going to constantly learn, and sometimes we'll win. And Larry, very proud of the man. He's won in a big way and put up some crazy good businesses. And maybe you can share with us some of the businesses that you have successfully put up in your career, and because that in itself is a great source of inspiration to see that someone can come from humble beginnings and really be significant and really making a difference every day in someone else's life. Now, one of the things that really brought Larry and myself together is a couple of months ago, I think it was early this year, I had a phone call from Mr. Tom Ziglar, the son of the great Zig Ziglar. And Tom says, Staying, I've got this friend coming into South Africa to bring souls to the kingdom of God. And I need someone that can show him the lay of the land. And I said, I would love to meet Larry, and I'll definitely show him, as a fellow Ziegler brother, love to show him the lay of the land. And I met a man that, in my humble opinion, is the epitome of kindness. Really the example of how it's supposed to be. So one of the things that really interests me, Larry, and I think our listeners would really appreciate, is to get a bit of an insight or an understanding, what brought you there. So you had a privilege of walking alongside Zig Ziglar for more than, I think, 40 years. Now, if I look at someone that walks alongside someone like Zig Ziglar, it's almost like growing up with Zig by your side, So how did that begin, man? How did you end up having such an incredible journey of such a great man?
Well, that's a great question, and it was a very humble beginning. Stain, but I can share with you with total confidence, meeting him for the first time was a lot like you and I meeting for the first time. I knew a couple of things about you before we met. For example, you never make another millionaire wait on you. You cannot make them wait. They need to have their bags packed. They need to be organized when we're spending time together, so we don't waste time with just less than meaningful tasks, things that can be done with non-productive time. But my time with Stain, like Zig, it was always productive time. So I always showed him honor. I always kept a legal pad and a pen with me. Those little ideas and little bits of wisdom that he would often share, I wanted to capture them so I could study them and by repetition start learning more about Zig and his philosophy. But Stain, you have developed this core philosophy with your own life, that you can have more out of life if you help other people get what they are. So you're able to focus on them and help them a lot like Zig did. And that sets up a win-win. I think it's important that we share with our audience that as you grow and develop and start thinking how you can help others genuinely, whether it's a product or service you're offering or just your friendship, you're not doing that to manipulate someone so they will give you something in return. You're actually looking how you can help them. I met with a gentleman this past week that leads one of the largest churches in the entire country of South Africa. When I sat down with Andre Lombard for the first time, the first question he asked me, he said, Larry, how can we help you with your goals to greater success? Now, here's a guy that I'm humbled to even be with. And I look for ways to help Andre with his goals in both his church and his family and his career. Anything I could do for this guy, Stain knows this, and I mean it, just like my commitment to Stain and our friendship. I would do it. We'll figure out how to get it done, but the answer is yes. Let's tackle the project. But here I am sitting with another great guy, and the first thing he says, how can he help me to greater success? I mean, there it is in a nutshell. Zig always knew I had his best interest at heart. And lastly, I'll close with this. Listeners, keep showing up. If you have a chance to be around the great ones, keep showing up. Just humble yourselves, legal pad and pen in hand, so you can get notes and all the great ideas. And especially, being on this podcast with a man like Stain, don't take that for granted. You have access to someone like this. Please don't take it for granted that it will always be there, because it may not be there. And the time is now. The time has to be now that we prepare and we get ready for what we're going to do on the larger stage later in life. So take advantage of that opportunity. And I did that with Zig. I kept showing up. I kept being around him and looking for ways I could help him personally and in his professional career. Now, fast forward 20 years later, after I met Zig, there was an opportunity to work more closely with him in a business environment, in a business opportunity. And of course, we blew it out of the water. The success was phenomenal. And I'm very humbled to have been there with him at that time. So keep showing up. And if you're spending a little money to be around great men with wisdom and a source of inspiration, you will never look back and regret that time.
Isn't it incredible? One of the things that I really, really, truly believe in life is that, isn't it incredible how life just changes when we adapt an attitude of giving without expectation. And literally, if I'm listening to you about showing up, That's one of the ways we can give, and is by just show up. It's such a profound message, and I want to make sure that we share that message with our listeners, and that they get it and understand it. Give without expectation. We're here to make life better for someone else. We have to literally, in my viewpoint, we need two things in life to be really successful. One is extreme ownership. Stop making excuses and start doing things. And the second thing is to have a servant mentality. And what I'm hearing, Larry sharing with us this morning is, how can I help you? How can I make life better for you? How can I help you get to your goals and your end destination? And that really, Larry, thank you for sharing such a incredible message. But it does bring me to a question of what it was really like with Zig behind the scenes. We all know Zig on stage, an incredible speaker, an incredible motivator, someone who've touched, I think, somewhere around 250 million people's lives at the end of the day. And that in itself is quite impressive. But I'm curious as to what it was really like walking with the man as a person, as a mentor behind the scenes, just as a man, a fellow guy, not the Zig on stage. What was he like behind the scenes?
Right. Well, Zig was the most consistent man that I've ever met. So when you see Zig publicly, you're also seeing him privately. Of course, a number of times I would find myself on a Sunday afternoon or a Wednesday up at his home and watch him and the redhead, Jean, interact with each other or their children. No one doubted that Zig loved Jean. If he was close enough to be near her, he always had his arm around her. But they would give little flirts to each other in the privacy of their home. And he would do that whether if he was in church or at a business meeting. I mean, Zig was obviously a very learned man with a college education. He served in the military. And but Zig taught me to never waste time. And he lived that behind the scene. I often would carry one or two books with me and always a legal pad and a pen, because Zig was one of the most copious note takers that I have ever met. It would be people that he would be around, like Dennis Waitley or some of the greats, Criswell, Charles Stanley, even some of the greats that Zig would share ideas and counsel with himself. But he always had a pen and paper. And I developed that habit of carrying that with me all the time. And I share that with guys that travel with me and spend time with me. I asked him, I said, please don't let me look up and see you without a pen and a paper. I have a guy that traveled in from Neil Sprite to work with me the next couple of weeks over in the Cape. And one of the first thing I noticed with Petros, he had a pen and a paper. I didn't have to ask him. Oh, it's exciting because we both are capturing all those great ideas. And let me think of the last thing. One of the last bits of advice, living in Zig's private life, he really lived out things he talked about. For example, he and I had a lot of talks about 3 things you can't do in life. You can't solve sawdust. You cannot put toothpaste back in the tube. And you cannot push a rope. Now, he told me there's things in life you can't do. Leads up to this final one-liner that he often shared from the stage, being paid $80,000 or more for a 3-hour talk. Zig would tell his audience, and we share with you here today, we can't change our past. So you can't push a rope, can't put toothpaste back in the tube, you can't solve sawdust. We can't change things that have already happened in life. There's some things you can't do, but we do have to make friends with our past and forgive ourselves and forgive others so that we can go on and live a brilliant life, a free life, without being, on antidepressants and taking medicine to deal with mental issues and mental hangups that we really don't have to carry with. Christ died on a cross and offered his forgiveness to you and I, so we can hit the reset button when things are not right, or our conscience tells us that something doesn't feel right. Well, we have to extend that same grace to each other. I remember one afternoon I was up at Zig's office it was after lunch. I just happened to stop in, and Zig had planned to go down and attend a funeral of a friend of his. And he says, "Hey, Larry, why don't you ride with me? We'll run down to the church and attend this funeral." And I said, "I'd like that. Thanks, Zig." And I remember getting in the old Ford with him and driving from Carrollton down to downtown Dallas, where the funeral was taking place. But just to walk in with Zig, with all these great men there to honor the life of this very successful individual. When Zig walks in a room, they grab him by the arm and they usher him to the front pew, the front row. So getting to sit there with Zig on the front row of a funeral that had hundreds of thousands of people in attendance was just one of those normal days being with Zig. And he's always prepared. Zig was not on the program to speak that day, but he was prepared if he was asked to speak. So, being in and around Zig for over 40 years, Stain, it was quite a ride. And lastly, I never wanted to disappoint him, you know. So people that are getting close to you or looking at making commitments of being around you more, one of the things that they should think about and contemplate is not to put themselves or decisions they make with their life in a compromising situation that might cast a negative influence on your reputation and what you stand for. We're always mindful of that. Of course, Stain and I, we live our life that way. We're an open book. And we just know there's some things that other people can do, but there's a lot of things that we choose not to do because it might tarnish or damage someone's reputation. And there's no room for that. So
and I agree with you.
Yep.
I agree with you there, because I've literally, personally come to learn that about Zig and his children, Tom and Julie and Cindy, that never do something that'll hurt someone else's reputation, and don't do stuff that'll hurt your own reputation. So be upstanding is literally, one of the things I came to learn in my journey with the Ziglers is that you have to be upstanding, have high standards. And that's such an incredible lesson in life, I think, is that, we should always take care of the people. And one of the things Tom asked, I don't know if you've seen that podcast earlier the month when Tom was on with me, he said, what will you be doing with the people God put in front of you? And that was such a profound thing to say. And it's really about taking care in essence. And I want to ask you this, Larry, so in that journey with Zig and having the privilege for so many years to walk along a really incredible individual, what would you say was the greatest lesson he taught you about leadership and life?
Well, Zig taught me a lot of lessons. It's hard to choose, but I often tell people, Zig didn't teach me how to make a lot of money. We did not have a lot of conversations about what we were going to do in business to create income stream, because there's over 22,000, last time I checked, over 22,000 different jobs in the United States. And I'm sure it's the same here in South Africa. Occupations or skill sets that people can be involved in. But we have to carry our name and our reputation to the job. But the thing that Zig probably helped me the most with, and I tell audiences everywhere I go, is the power in goal setting. Stain, I know that you teach that as part of your leadership and personal training with people. But if you really want to make a lot of money or become a multimillionaire, one of the things you must come to grips with, we have to set goals for our life, meaningful, specific goals that we can be passionate about and things that we care about. But the 7 steps to set and accomplish a goal, which Stain could help any of our listening audience learn to master. Those 7 steps help create so many successes in my life. I tracked over 200 different goals specifically and kept the records on. For example, I graduated from a 4-year university in 3 years. And I did that by sleeping with a goals program under my pillow, filled it out every night. It kept me on track, on target, because I wanted to get in college, in the university, gain my education, and then get out in the field. I wanted to get busy and start creating wealth. Another area that Zig helped me in as the goals planner was the tool that allowed me to see all the success. I built a media company, which later in my life I sold to CBS or Viacom. But part of developing that media company was setting goals to keep doubling and tripling and quadrupling. The percentages of growth every year exceeded 100%, usually in the 300, 400% arena. Once I learned to master what I was doing in the media business, the communications business, and could do that on scale, then I got busy and used the goals planner, which Stain is so equipped to teach others about as a master trainer with Ziglar. But that's probably the most key area that Zig ever helped me in, without a question.
Sounds like it's about knowing what you want, and then knowing what your responsibility is and what are the things you have to do to get it.
Yes.
Because often we don't know what we want, or we know what we want, but we don't put the steps in place it take to actually get to the end of that goal. And I want to just, take a bit of a back turn back to that quote that you offered from Zig, which is really my favorite quote about you can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. And what I'm really interested to understand is that how you have seen that play out, specifically in your own businesses and on your mission work, because you're on a mission at this moment in time and place in life. And I'm interested to share with the audience how that specific quote, because often we read motivational quotes often. And I haven't attended an event in the last 40 years of my life that the speaker or the guy on stage have not offered some form of a motivational quote. But I often wonder whether people take something from it, whether they take that quote and implement it in life in some form or nature or way so that they can actually experience the end result of it. So I'm really interested to know for you as a person, how that have played out in your business and how's it playing out right now with what you are doing right now at this moment?
Well, Stain, thank you. If I can share an example while we're moving away from goal setting and back to following our passions in life. When I mapped out originally what I was wanting to accomplish here in the country of South Africa, I don't know how much of this we can catch on film, but I had to put on paper. First, I had to put on paper all the thoughts, ideas, groups of people, organization, the marketing, the advertising, the travel. So to do that with something that Stain teaches, I'm sure, is called a mind map. And Stain could touch base on this later. But it's what it looks like, and what we're actually doing in life is just having a brain dump. We're getting all this out of our brain and get it on paper. But then the fun comes in and the real kill shot comes in when we can take all these categories and break them down. And Dana and I work very closely with each other, my beautiful wife. And she and I will take a mind map and segment it so we can accomplish the individual goals. And it's really fun once you get some momentum going to see how wonderful this works. Stain, this seems like a silly elementary step, but I'm sure some of our listeners have struggled from time to time, as you alluded. I've got all this in my head, but how do I get it down on paper when I can manage it and step by step accomplish the goal? So it's not something as silly as a mind map. And Stain, I don't know, you probably create that, share that. I know you realize how it works. And you've written a couple of books, and you and I have talked about doing some other speaking engagements together and creating some product together. But that all is really part of that process. And fast forward chasing the mission I'm in now. Of course, it all began on a big mind map. But over time, when you realize, and Jim McEachern of Tom James Company, Jim has deceased, but one of the wisest men I ever met. Jim taught me that we're constantly moving in the direction of our most dominant thought. Earl Nightingale says it several other different ways, but the truth is, things we focus on, we are constantly moving in that direction. So why not take control of that? I did that with my foundation that we launched this past year, the Carpenter Future Foundation. But we wanted to focus on kids ages 8 to 18 and start contributing and offering a school program where we could focus on the self-esteem and the performance of kids in school, especially here in the country of South Africa, where that is so needed. 50% of the audience here in these public schools, 50% of the school attendance, the kids go home to no mother or no father. It's someone else, an aunt or an uncle, or just someone in the neighborhood that offers them shelter to take care of them. So to be involved in a calling where we go in and work with the children and encourage the kids to be the best version of themselves, that's all I care about anymore. That's what I'm going to do the rest of my career. And so Zig played a big part of that in helping me to develop over the years. People say, I will get started, but I'm going to wait 30 days, or I'm going to wait till January the 1st. And there's a law out there called the law of diminishing return. So if you're sharing with us here today and you've taken the time to key into this live broadcast, think about setting 1 or 2 goals. And I would think one of the most important goals you could set would be to find out how to follow up and get in contact with Stain and his organization and see what Stain can do to help you to greater success. I can speak well of him because I'm a customer of Stain. He's advised me in business. Stain has offered me advice and direction and clarity in my new foundation that we've developed. And we're having phenomenal success. We intend by the end of this year to have reached over 50,000 kids with our purpose and our calling in life. So that's exciting. And if by reaching this goal by the end of this year, we believe we can set a goal to reach 1 million kids within the next 5 to 7 years. So we're excited about that. And but it all comes into taking action on things you learn about. And today, even during this broadcast, I've got a couple of ideas I'm writing down that Stain has shared or spoke about today that I want to take action on. And I've learned if you don't take action in the first 24 hours, the desire to take action and move ahead on your goal or your passion or something that you're curious about in life, that starts to diminish to about 80%. And if you wait 2 days, it goes pretty quickly down to 0. So please consider doing something for yourself, for your family, and take action on your goals and dreams. And I would suggest that you consider plugging into what Stain teaches with his program and just doing some one-on-one counseling or whatever seems to fit your time slot and your budget at this time. So thank you for that question, Stain.
Yeah, thanks for that, Larry. And it's interesting what we're talking often on this platform, it's called the moment of significance because it's really finding the combination of success, significance, and legacy. And we have a large focus on leadership per se, because leadership is such an important concept. And I want to maybe ask this question, as far as your learning from Zig over the years. What would you say is that one thing every business leader should learn today? If we could give one message out to business leaders out there and say, you know what, if you want to, just in modern times where we are right now, right here, here's this one thing that we really truly believe will make leadership better in every single way. From your experience as a very experienced hand, what would that lesson be?
Yeah. Well, Stain, several things come to my mind, but if I was going to narrow it to just one, I would try to connect with the audience today. And I would remind you something that Dennis Waitley and I talked about the last time I was with Dennis at a formal event in Dallas, Texas. And Dennis was working on a concept, and we sat there and talked about it together and was able to, in written form, make notes on it and talk about it later in our friendship. But Dennis really originated the thought that it's not what you are that holds you back. It's what you think you're not.
Wow.
It's not what you are that holds you back. It's what you think you're not. So often we're our own worst critics, aren't we? We don't give ourselves quite the credit, and maybe we don't believe in ourselves quite enough. But Stain and I are here today. We're available to you. We do believe in you, and we do realize the potential that you have to touch the lives of 1 or 10 or 100, or maybe for some of you, thousands of people with your career choices. And maybe it's time to write a book. You've thought about it. You've had people encourage you to write a book. Well, Stain can talk with you more about that because he's written a book. And they say after you write 2 or 3, it gets really easy to write more books and share your experiences with others and leave that legacy for them. But it's not what you are that holds you back. It's what you think you're not. So let's just give ourselves a little more credit today. Let's bet on ourselves before we ask someone else to invest in us and bet on us. So that's the thought I would leave you with, Stain.
Oh, fantastic, Larry. That's such a cool way of looking at it. It's not what you think you are, it's what you think you're not. I really love that. So here's the thing about about Larry. Larry's career has spanned over everything from real estate development, racing cars, racing motorcycles, jumping out of airplanes, to the greatest extent, just living large and just living life full out. Right now, doing large scale motivational work. I know on his earlier visit in South Africa earlier this year, Larry reached 20,000 kids. On this trip out here right now in the Western Cape, must probably reach 50,000 kids and bringing them to a better place. What an incredible privilege to do that. But I also know that from knowing Larry, that Larry have experienced both tremendous success and really very successful businessman. But in that success, there are also major challenges, like life has to offer us all the time. It's not all moonshine and roses. So if I can ask Larry, and I know this is, maybe a more difficult question, is, what have been some of the defining moments in your business journey? Sometimes, I always believe that sometimes we do really, really well, and other times we learn really good lessons. And what was some of the most defining moments for Larry Carpenter in your business journey as a successful man?
Yeah, well, a couple of them come to mind. Listening audience, you should understand today as our friend, I've made more mistakes than probably anyone keyed in on the broadcast today. I've made hundreds of mistakes. I've made thousands of mistakes. Now, my goal is to never make a mistake. It really is. I hate dealing with a problem or something that's reoccurring that a little more work or planning could have prohibited. But 2 of those major problems, one helped me launch my media business. I applied for National 3M in the States to go to work with their outdoor advertising billboard program, and they would not hire me. At the time, I had about a year and a half experience working with an entrepreneur with just 6 outdoor displays. And I had filled them up, 6 displays, 12 faces. I'd filled them all up and thought, I need a little bigger paycheck. Let me go to one of the big national companies. And I did the interview and they turned me down. They turned me down because they said I did not have enough experience qualified to work with them. Well, I got to tell you, Stain, that pissed me off. And because they did not know how much shoe leather I had worn out and removing the risk. And at that time, just selling outdoor, not even developing all the sites. So that rejection, I turned it around and realized that God was actually calling me to go out and start my own company. So I assembled the right team, started meeting with the bankers, which also was a rejection. I think the first 6 banks I talked with said, Carpenter, you can never do what you're dreaming of. I just don't believe it. And I said, well, you watch my smoke. I am going to do it. And then later in life, when I had a couple of hundred ad faces and earning over $150,000 a month in net income, I remember sending that guy a pair of shoes, new Allen Edmonds shoes, and saying, thanks for your advice. It was well intended, but I did make it. And also in the hotel business, I had setbacks. People that knew me knew I was an entrepreneur, and I love to go out and create income producing assets. I did that with real estate, but I love creating income stream with a ownership in real estate that would pay me whether I was there or not. You show up selling used cars, you sell a car or you sell a product and you earn a paycheck, right? You earn a paycheck, but then you got to go sell again to earn a paycheck again. Well, I had run and been in the presence of people and been around a lot of guys that had developed various income streams with real estate. So I love those three words: income producing assets. So you can do that with a hotel also. If you want to build a hotel, get you a management team, and then clip coupons. The trouble is, I hired a management team when I originally built the Anchor Hotel for the Clinton Presidential Library. I hired one of the greatest management teams in the world. They sold me on it. But you know, Stain, they were losing $25,000 a month in revenue. Yeah. 25,000 times 12, that's a pain to lose 300,000 in a year. And I did not see it improving. So I had people tell me, Carpenter, you don't want to go into hotel management. You are not going to be the guy. You're too serious and focused to work with 50 employees in a large hotel environment. But I let the naysayers motivate me to do exactly what they said I couldn't do. I learned to understand the different departments and the 6 areas we had to work, and we leveraged that into building a hotel that actually, the last 5 years before I sold the property, we had one guest service complaint for every 6,108 rooms occupied. So wow. We were in the game. And but there again, I just took the philosophy and the same teaching model that Stain Rousseau is so dedicated with. You know, traveling with him this week, it reminded me of Stain has invested over 20 years of his career studying and preparing to be here for the listening audience today. He and I both have a world of vast experiences, a lot of failures in life. We don't want you guys to have to stump your toe and learn the hard way. But again, I make a new appeal for those that maybe have just joined us. Do consider reaching out and on a small basis or a medium type time commitment, check Stain out and see if you can plug into what he teaches, because all the principles that I'm using in my life and career, Stain and I both have studied and worked very hard for over 20 years. Me, I'm a little older than Stain. I've worked over 40 years on these same principles that can help you become a multimillionaire, and it will happen. And then you get to a point later in your career where you're able to set up a foundation or do things that you have a passion for that is not tied to a paycheck. And that's when it's really fun and really outstanding. So
absolutely.
I hope
I'm curious, Larry, and you know, I know you well, and I know the kind of person you are, and you're most probably one of the most humblest people I've ever met in my life that's really successful. And I've often experienced in my own career, you know, that we get super successful and our ego starts to run away with us most of the time. So how do you stay grounded and humble when things are going really, really well? I mean, you've just like done so much in business and have achieved so much and became really, you know, creating really generational wealth in those businesses. How do you stay grounded and humble when things are really, really go well? How do you stay hopeful when they're not? Because both of us have seen both sides of that coin, you know. So sometimes when we really do well, for most people, we forget to ask, how do I stay humble? How do I stay grounded? How do I keep my feet on the ground? And then other times when it's really not going that well, we lose hope. And I'm really from a man that's managed to actually do this, you know, because I've seen you stay grounded and stay humble amidst tremendous success. But I've also seen you overcome and stay hopeful when things doesn't play out exactly as planned. How do you do that?
Well, Stain, we touched on it earlier, and I'd like to share with the audience. I decided early in my young apprenticeship that there was more to life than just material possessions. So I turned, after I was working on the mental, feeding your mind, physical, take care of your body, and I do it every day. We got up and ran this morning a couple of miles, me and my friend, just to stay committed. There's not a day goes by, for example, that I don't work on my physical fitness. A little bit every day, and it's just, you know, part of my routine. So I need the mental, physical, but the third dimension of my life that is significant and significant is the fact that I give a lot of time and investment to the spiritual dimension of my life. I don't think I'm as humble as Stain is indicating today. I try to remain humble and mindful that I came from a very humble beginning, twisting wrenches on cars and trucks. And I'm glad that I've experienced even the failures of my life to humble me and remind me that God owns it all. And I share with the audience, if you're not humble, most of you know God has a way of humbling us individually, and he will tailor make a program or tailor make something, a failure, a colossal screw up that can just bring us back to earth. But I better remain humble, and I'm cognizant of that every single day. The thing that makes me get up and dust myself off and keep going every day. I'm raising 3 sons and a daughter, and they have to see a father that, yes, I've experienced hardships and challenges in life, and all of them have successfully developed and owned their own businesses. They're extremely successful. One of my sons won the U.S. Southern Amateur in the world back in 2011. So they practiced and committed to developing a lot of skill in the world of golf. All 3 of them are scratch golfers. But Alex went on to win a world championship, and then he won 21 times while in college, applying the same principles, the same action steps that we touched on some of these today. Stain teaches those in a great way, a great personal way, that he could walk with you through your life and be available to you. And I'm available to Stain for anything the guy would personally ever call me for. So what an honor to be here with you today and share a couple of our ideas and some of our successes and failures in life. And I hope that they've been helpful to you.
Yeah. I'm going to start wrapping it up, but I have so many more questions to ask Larry, and it's just so insightful speaking to a man who's really, walk the walk and talk the talk and really living life on the principles that he shares with people. One of the things I really share with leaders and leadership often is that one of the greatest examples of leadership exists in Africa. Proudly African, and literally, it's this thing that happens in a place called Tanzania. They got about 1.3 million wildebeest that trek after water and food through the whole of the country in a circle every year. But once a year, these wildebeest come to the Great Mara River, and they gather on the banks of the river, and it's the most crocodile-infested river most probably in the world. And they'd literally stand there and die of hunger and thirst right on the edge of the river if it's not for the leader jumping into the crocodile-infested rivers. But once that happens, once that leader shows the courage, takes the lead, so to speak, and I really believe in my own heart that's where leadership comes from, it inspires them to the tune that they all jump in and they overwhelm the crocodiles. And the crocodiles only get to eat the really weak because they have to eat too. But most of them make it to the other side and they are saved and they can trek another year and find food and water. And often in business, what I teach people and when I engage leadership, I tell them it's about the example you set. It's how you show up. People will learn more from you from what they see you do than what they'll ever learn from you from what you tell them to do. Now, I know, you've been around being that kind of leader that shows up. You've been the kind of leader that often jumps in first, that shows the way. What does setting an example as a leader mean to you? Because it has to mean something to us to show up that way. And I really do think it's one of the single most important things in leadership is the way we show up. The example we set, the way we engage people and how we show them that we care. One of the things I came to learn is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them. And I think that's really being this a leadership thing, maybe a profound part of the message is that, what does leading by example mean to Larry Carpenter is what I'm interested in. Because I believe that is one of the single most important keys leadership can ever practice, is leading by example, showing up and showing what you want instead of just telling. So what does leading by example mean to Larry Carpenter?
Yeah. Well, Stain, thank you. And what I'm about to share, Stain Rousseau and I have this in common with each other. And I believe there's hundreds or thousands of you out there in the listening audience today that will relate to what I'm about to share with you. And that is the man in the mirror, the concept of the man in the mirror. You know, there's something innate within us that wants to be true to ourselves. We want to be able to look in the mirror and know that that's an honest person. He does what he says he's going to do. And that probably drives me or propels me as much as anything, Stain, that I would enlist others in the race, but then not be able to perform and be in the race myself. That'd be so disappointing to me. I once did a word study on the word love, and I spent 6 months studying one word, love. And I think I found the most truest answer to what is love in Dr. Scott Peck, his book. The name of the book has slipped my mind, but the principle has not. And Scott Peck believed that love, Dr. Peck believed that love was defined as discipline. The Road Less Traveled, that's the book, Stain. The Road Less Traveled by Dr. Scott Peck. Incredible book. I probably read it 10 times in my life. But in the book, he describes love as discipline. And the reason is there's nothing we do for someone else. We open a car door, we prepare a meal, we get up and go to work, we polish our shoes, we polish their shoes, we clean the floor, we mop, we stop and pick up a bouquet of flowers. Or as I did with Dana this last week on 2 occasions, I stopped and picked flowers, wild flowers, and just kind of put them together in a little bouquet and presented to her. But it never dawned on me until I read it in black and white that discipline, self-discipline is required to show love to other people. And I think that's what we're equipped with. Guys like Stain and I, we've just so much desire to serve other people in a genuine capacity. And we want to be of service to you today, this listening audience. And I hope that there's something that we shared that will inspire you or encourage you, if nothing else, to pick up the phone or go to the keyboard and reach out and share some of your thoughts with Stain later today. But I'll close with that. Just my desire to stay committed to being disciplined with my life. And I may not always feel like getting up and going, but I do grab myself by the collar, something Zig taught me, throw myself into the job, throw myself into the task, go around the car and open the car door for Dana. You do those things because not only are they the right thing to do, but logic itself will not change the emotion, but taking action will. So throw yourself into it, take action, and you'll see that the rest of your body will catch up with it.
Thank you for that, Larry. You know, Larry, one of the things I've learned from you is literally you choose faith over fear on a daily basis. And your mission, I believe, is literally to help young kids understand that choice and help them make that choice. And this is the one I want to put out to the guys out there, people listening today, and perhaps, you have a child in school, or perhaps you are a teacher in the school or a principal at the end of the day. And, maybe Larry comes to your area. This guy has got an incredible way of connecting with the kids and help them understand the choice of faith over fear. And I know Larry is going to be in the Western Cape and Paul for the next 3 or 4 weeks. And the goal is to reach 50,000 young kids and help them make that choice and help them understand, the importance of choosing faith over fear and what life looks like when we make the right choices. And I want to thank Larry for being on this podcast today and sharing from his heart, and like only Larry can. I've come to know this guy and love him to bits, and no one can share the story the way Larry can share it. And, if I can say something to Larry, his life and work remind us that leadership is not about position. It's about permission. The permission we give others to believe again, to hope again, to rise again. And this is something that I've literally learned from Larry. Your life and work, what you do on a daily basis, how you help kids see a better place, is literally a daily reminder that leadership is not about our position. It's not that title. It is about permission, the permission we give others to believe again and again and again, and to hope again and again, and to rise again and again. You've shown us that faith is not something we talk about. It's something we live. You've shown that through courage and consistency and compassion is what I've heard in this conversation today. And I hope that everyone that's listening here remembers these words, that when there's hope in the future, there's power in the present. And I once had the privilege of asking, I think it was Thomas Egg, what do you think the world needs right now? And the answer was hope and encouragement. And it really reminded me, speaking to Larry today, that, and I want to remind everyone listening to this podcast, remember these words. When there's hope in the future, there's power in the present. And I truly believe in that, and I know that Larry does too. So I want to thank you, Larry, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. You got a limited time in South Africa, for choosing to spend some of that time with me, because it's always exceptionally good to be in your presence and to see what you do, being Larry. And I often say to people when they meet Larry for the first time, you got to let Larry be Larry. He's an incredible man. He does an incredible job. And I want to thank you, Larry, for doing what you are doing. And may you be blessed. And thank you for joining us, guys out there. For the guys, watching this podcast every week, joining us every week, and maybe just grabbing one small little thing here and take it with you, implement it, uplift someone else's life. I want to thank you for doing that. And thank you for another absolutely crazy episode of A Moment of Significance. And until we meet next time, and until we see again, we'll be back here next Friday, same time, same place. Lead with love, live with purpose, and never stop creating significance. I love you all. Have a spectacular weekend ahead and next week ahead. And we'll see you soon on A Moment of Significance. Thank you, Larry.